Hello, it's now 3 o'clock Eastern. You joined the Justice and Mental Health Collaboration Program Solicitation webinar. To allow for additional sign-ins past the hour, we'll start the webinar in just a few minutes. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining today's 2003 Justice and Mental Health Collaboration Program Solicitation webinar. Today's webinar is focused on the Justice and Mental Health Collaboration Program Solicitation. My name is Aisha Delaney-Brumsey. I'm the Director of the Behavioral Health Division at the Council State Government's Justice Center. I'll be moderating today's webinar, which is funded by the U.S. Department of Justice, Bureau of Justice Assistance. Next slide. To give you an overview of today's webinar, first I'll just introduce our speakers, then there'll be an overview of the Justice and Mental Health Collaboration Program. After that, we'll discuss the award information, the budget, application criteria, and submission requirements. Finally, towards the end of the webinar, we'll leave time for question and answers. At any time during the webinar, you can ask a question by clicking the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen and entering your question. This includes both technical and content-related questions. We'll try to reply to technical questions in the chat window as we go. For the content-related questions, we'll keep a running list and address as many of them as possible at the end of the webinar. We'll do our best to get through as many of those questions as possible. If you do encounter a technical or audio problem during the webinar, please click on the links that are going to be dropped into the chat box. Unfortunately, sometimes there are technical issues that we may not be able to resolve, but we are recording the webinar and we will post it on our website at the end of next week, should you not be able to hear it live. Next slide. So in addition to myself, we have two speakers, both from the Department of Justice. We have Maria Fryer, who is the Justice System and Mental Health Policy Advisor at the U.S. Department of Justice's Bureau of Justice Assistance, otherwise known as BJA. She oversees the Justice and Mental Health Collaboration portfolio, which includes both JMHCP as well as Connect and Protect. With the work of the Justice System in partnership with us, she works to assist states, local governments, and behavioral health organizations to better understand the relationship between criminal justice systems and mental health problems, and to help create policy and programming that meets the needs of municipalities and the citizens they serve. Ms. Fryer previously worked at the North Carolina Governor's Crime Commission, where she advised the governor's office on effectively addressing the needs of victims of violent crime. She also served in community corrections and served in the United States Army. Thank you, Maria. We're also pleased to have Nikisha Love, who is a policy advisor with the Bureau of Justice Assistance. She manages the Justice and Mental Health Collaboration Program and is a significant source of information about that. Thank you for joining us, Nikisha. Next slide. So now we're going to move into the next phase where we're going to give you the overview of the Bureau of Justice Assistance, the Council State Government's Justice Center, and the Justice and Mental Health Collaboration Program. And next slide, I will turn it to Maria to talk about the Bureau of Justice Assistance and the Office of Justice Programs.
Great. Thank you so much, Nikisha. Aisha. I was talking to Nikisha. I'm glad she's here too. So thank you everyone for being on today. The Bureau of Justice Assistance is located in the Office of Justice Programs, or OJP. And OJP provides a wide range of services to the criminal justice community in the form of grants, training, technical assistance, and research. Although our focus today is on BJA funding opportunities, there are other OJP offices, such as those that you see on the right side of the slide, that offer additional grants and programs to support our shared public safety missions. Next slide. BJ's mission is to provide leadership and services in grant administration and criminal justice policy development to support state, local, and tribal justice strategies and to achieve safer communities. BJA works with communities, governments, and nonprofit organizations to reduce crime, recidivism, and unnecessary confinement, and promote safe and fair criminal justice systems. Specifically, BJA provides funding to support law enforcement, combat violent and drug-related crime, and combat victimization. Through the development and implementation of policies, services, and sound grant management, BJA strengthens the nation's criminal justice system and restores security in communities. Next slide. So this is our director, Director Carlton Moore, who was appointed by President Biden in February of 2022. Director Moore leads the BJA's programmatic and policy efforts on providing a wide range of resources, including training and technical assistance to law enforcement, courts, corrections, treatment, reentry, justice information sharing, and community-based partners to address chronic and emerging criminal justice challenges nationwide. On this slide, you can see the offices within BJA and all that is under his oversight. Next slide. So 5 major strategic focus areas within BJA, you can see on this slide and read more about the 5 primary strategic focus areas at BJA, many of which relate directly to the work in the grant programs that BJA administers. These include a strategic focus on building trust and ensuring effective criminal justice systems, reducing recidivism and unnecessary contact with the criminal justice system, utilization of evidence-based strategies, increasing program effectiveness, and ensuring organizational excellence. Next slide. So we call this the FEEP, the Fund, Educate, Equip, and Partner. And I haven't memorized that yet. And here you are viewing key approaches that BJA takes to accomplish objectives in their strategic areas of focus. Many of these strategies are put into action through grant programs, such as the Connect and Protect program and JMHCP. And Connect and Protect will be tomorrow. So today we're just talking about JMHCP, the Justice and Mental Health Collaboration Program. Thank you so much. I'm going to hand it back over to Aisha briefly.
Thank you so much, Maria. So for those of you who have not encountered us before, the Council of State Governments Justice Center, also sometimes called the Justice Center, is a national nonprofit, nonpartisan organization. Our goal is to improve justice system processes nationally. Next slide. This slide describes a little bit more about how we work and how we and our core values. So we are committed to being independent and nonpartisan in every aspect of our work, providing rigorous, trusted, high-quality analysis, developing practical and innovative solutions that are informed by data and research, promoting collaboration and consensus, and being inclusive and respectful of diverse viewpoints and experiences. Next slide. So as you know, today we are focused on JMHCP, the Training and Technical Assistance Award, which many of you are already familiar with, or you may already have a current or past Justice and Mental Health Collaboration Program, or JMHCP TTA grant. The Justice Center has been the technical assistance provider for this award since its inception. And so should you be awarded it, we would be working directly with you with the support of BJA. So JMHCP promotes innovative cross-system collaborations and provides grants directly to states, local governments, and federally recognized Indigenous nations to improve responses for people with mental health conditions or co-occurring mental health and substance use conditions who are involved in the justice system. And it specifically focuses on helping parts of the criminal justice system other than law enforcement, such as courts, jails, and community corrections, work with their behavioral health partners. Next slide. Also within JMHCP, there is another award that we have a solicitation webinar for tomorrow called the Connect and Protect Solicitation. And that award does similar work, but focuses specifically on improving law enforcement and how law enforcement intersects with people with mental health and co-occurring mental health conditions, and how law enforcement partners with behavioral health and social services to improve outcomes for people with mental health needs. As I noted, as I just said, we are hosting a similar solicitation a similar webinar for that solicitation tomorrow, and you can register at the link that we are going to post in the chat. If you're not able to attend, we will also post that webinar on our website. So if you're not able to go listen tomorrow, it will be available to you as a recording. Next slide. I'm going to pass this on back to you, Maria.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. So now we're going to get into the actual Justice and Mental Health Collaboration Program, and we'll begin with the program activities. And as many of you know, JMHCP, there we go. JMHCP supports a wide range of program activities, and these are examples of the types of activities. Are we on slide 15? Yes, okay. Examples of the types of activities that JMHCP supports. It's not meant to be an exhaustive list. All of these activities aim to reduce criminal justice involvement and improve outcomes for people with mental health disorders and mental health and substance use disorders who come in contact with the criminal justice system. This includes activities such as connecting people to supports through the National 988 Suicide Mental Health Crisis Lifeline, through crisis stabilization units or pre-arrest diversion initiatives. It is also includes the creation or expansion of specialized mental health courts or other court-based interventions, as well as prosecutor and defense-led diversion strategies. And JMHCP does support a very wide array of activities. Next slide, slide 16. Okay, so other examples, initiatives include supported employment services, specialized caseloads, cross-system training. And when I say cross-system training, it could be between criminal justice and behavioral health and other types of intergovernmental coordination. JMHCP can take up a lot of different activities that help to support people with mental health disorders in the community and across the criminal justice system generally. Okay, next slide, 17, specific information. So the purpose of this solicitation, for this solicitation, the definition of a mental health disorder includes people with traumatic brain injuries or post-traumatic stress disorder. And we're just kind of putting a little bit of a highlight on that this year, just in order to raise awareness and perhaps increase the availability of different types of services for people with traumatic brain injury or PTSD. Next slide. Eligibility, we're talking about eligible applicants here. The eligible applicants for this grant are city or township governments, county governments, Native American tribal governments, of course, federally recognized by the Secretary of the Interior, public and state-controlled institutions of higher education, state governments, and what we call other mental health agencies and criminal justice agencies. So there are some types of organizations that fall into that category of other, and that's the way you'll see it in the solicitation, it's just listed as other category. But the way it's noted on the slide, the other agencies they may have a different legal status. Perhaps they are a nonprofit or a for-profit mental health agency, and they are eligible to apply, but only if they meet two criteria. And the first one is that the applicant is designated by the state mental health authority to provide services as a unit of state or local government. So even though they are maybe a nonprofit, they're actually acting on behalf of the state, and they're acting as a unit of local government. And the second part of that is that the applicant really has to demonstrate that they are acting on behalf of the state. And the applicant has to attach to their application documentation that supports the fact that they are designated by the state to provide services. So if you're not sure, if you'd like to know more about whether or not your entity might be eligible under that category of other organization, or has this designation as a state agency or unit of local government, you can go to that link, the Directory of State Mental Health Authorities that SAMHSA has on their website, and you can call them and you can find out if you are designated by the state to be eligible to apply. And I just wanted to make note of that this year, because I know a lot of work goes into these applications. So if you're unsure, please call the number in your state and try to find out if you are designated as a state or a local unit of government. Next slide. A little more on eligibility. Also want to highlight, excuse me, an important point, because the Justice and Mental Health Collaboration Program is authorized by legislation to be a cross-system collaboration. And I kind of referred to that a little bit earlier. What is a cross-system collaboration? These are applications that are between a justice entity and a behavioral health or mental health agency. And we will only consider applications that are jointly administered, a program that's jointly administered as a cross-system collaboration, meaning by a criminal or juvenile justice agency and a mental health agency. So applicants must partner. They must partner between a justice entity and a mental health entity. Okay, so as I mentioned, a mental health agency is defined as an agency of the state or local government or its contracted agency that is responsible for mental health services or co-occurring mental health and substance use services. A criminal or juvenile justice agency is an agency of state or local government or its contracted agency that is responsible for the detection, arrest, enforcement, prosecution, defense, adjudication, incarceration, probation, or parole relating to the violation of criminal laws of that state or local government. So what I don't want to throw people off is when you hear under that other category where it says, the legislation says, or its contracted agency. You still have to, it's not just a contract, you still have to be a designated agency for the state and acting on behalf of the state through that specific designation. So I just wanted to make that clarification there. In addition, under the solicitation, only one application by any particular applicant will be considered. Other agencies or agencies must be proposed as subrecipients or subgrantees. So to summarize, when we talk about eligibility, I just want to recap. If you're the applicant that is going to apply under other, you must be considered a mental health authority or designee of the state. And then also it must be a partnership between a justice entity and a mental health or behavioral health service provider. And also only one application from one applicant entity. Next slide. I think we're on slide 20. Okay. Great. Okay, so JMHCP is specifically designated to target preliminary qualified offenders with mental health disorders or co-occurring mental health and substance use disorders. So preliminary qualified offender is outlined in the 21st Century Cures Act. Specifically, the act, and you can see the code I think is in there, provides that a person is a preliminarily qualified offender if the offender is unanimously approved for participation in the program by the prosecuting attorney, the defense attorney, probation or corrections official, the judge, the relevant mental health agency, and provided that those who can make approvals as enumerated above have determined that the person does not pose a risk of violence to any person in the program or the public if selected to participate in the program. In making that determination, the statute requires the following things be considered. So this is regarding all of those justice those justice entities and those officials that I just sort of enumerated, they have to be in agreement that the person does not pose a risk to the community. And when they make that determination, there's another list that I'm going to read that they have to consider when looking at the target population for this program. So in determining whether to designate or a defendant as a preliminarily qualified offender when they can participate, the relevant prosecuting attorney, defense attorney, probation, corrections official, judge, and mental health substance use agency representative shall take into account whether the participation of the defendant in the program would pose a substantial risk of violence to the community, the criminal history of the defendant and the nature and severity of the offense for which the defendant is charged, the views of any relevant victims to the offense, the extent to which the defendant would benefit from participation in the program, the extent to which the community would realize cost savings because of the defendant's participation in the program, and whether the defendant satisfies the eligibility criteria for program participation unanimously established by the relevant prosecuting attorney, defense attorney, probation or corrections official, judge, and mental health or substance use agency representative. A person who has been charged with or convicted of any sex offense or any offense related to the sexual exploitation of children or murder or assault with intent to commit murder cannot, and that's a cannot, participate in the program. So there are certain violent offenses that are explicitly called out in the statute as far as the target population is concerned. Other than those offenses, sex offenses, exploitation of children, murder, and assault, there is a little bit of wiggle room for those community officials to come together and have some sort of consensus whether or not the person should participate, and with the list of considerations to cover. Okay, slide 21, next slide, objectives. Okay, as I noted before, JMHCP supports a wide range of cross-system improvements. However, this year, the JMHCP solicitation is particularly focused on 4 objectives and seeking applications that address one or more of those objectives, which include, the first one is enhance, expand, or operate mental health drop-off crisis stabilization and treatment centers. The second one is increase workforce capacity for mental health peer support specializing and increasing the availability of wraparound services. And next slide, we have more objectives continued. 3, build and expand the capacity to identify, treat, and support recovery. And 4, build and expand existing justice and mental health collaboration initiatives across each point in the criminal justice system, with the exception of law enforcement focused projects, only because we have a carve out under JMHCP, which is the Connect and Protect, and we'll hear more about that tomorrow. And that one is specifically for law enforcement. Next slide, 23. Great, deliverables. So for applicants who are awarded the JMHCP grant award, there are a few deliverables that all awardees must complete. First, there's a 2-phase process consisting of first planning and second implementation. For phase 1, the planning phase, the grant recipients will receive intensive training and technical assistance, or we call TTA, from the Council of State Governments Justice Center. And under this phase, grantees follow a document called the Planning and Implementation Guide. We call it the P&I Guide. And this document is refined each year to meet the grantee's needs. As outlined in the solicitation, within 8 months of receiving final approval of the project's budget from OJP, that's from our office and from OVC, and if you're unsure, you can kind of go back to that overview slide. Grantees can spend up to $100,000 during this planning phase to work with the Justice Center on the P&I Guide. Past grantees have found that the planning phase helps to prioritize where to begin in the implementation. The second phase is the implementation phase, which grantees begin after BJA approves the grantee's P&I guide. The grantees can then spend the remaining grant funds on directly related implementation activities. So first is planning in the first 12 months, and you receive up to $100,000. And then once the P&I guide is approved, then you can move on to implementation. And you don't have to, and basically, you know, your grant funds are your grant funds, but we only release the first $100,000 until that planning guide is approved as the roadmap to your project. So your TA coach is going to approve that, and then BJA is going to approve that, and then you can move on to implementation. Next slide, other deliverables. Okay, so in addition, awardees must also develop a detailed implementation plan, as I mentioned, create a public-facing report that includes information on the program's available resources, describes how maybe perhaps demographic data was used to target a diverse population, and includes data on efficiencies and challenges to increase access and inclusion, and includes information on the number of people leaving the justice system who are successfully connected to services. Next slide, deliverables. As well, the grantee will incorporate training and technical assistance information and best practice guidance from the TTA provider, which is the Justice Center, during both the planning and the implementation phases of the program, and submit a sustainability plan before the close of the grant that describes the process for obtaining the necessary support to continue the program after the federal support concludes. Next slide, priority areas. So the Office of Justice Programs, of which the Bureau of Justice Assistance is a part of, weighs many factors when making funding decisions. This includes, but is not limited to, giving priority consideration to applications that meet the following criteria. The first one is supporting Executive Order 13985, which is about advancing racial equity and support for underserved communities through the federal government. So to receive this consideration, the applicant must describe how the proposed project will address potential inequities and barriers to equal opportunity or to contribute to greater access to services for underserved and historically marginalized populations. And BJA will also give consideration to rural communities. So the next slide is the program specific areas. And these are more related to the legislative priority areas. So thinking about that, promoting effective strategies for the identification and treatment of women who have been incarcerated with mental health disorders or co-occurring mental health and substance use disorders, and also expanding the use of mental health courts and similar services. Propose interventions that have been shown by empirical evidence to reduce recidivism, and when appropriate, use validated assessment tools to target people who are incarcerated with a moderate or high risk of recidivism and a need for treatment services. And I would just also add on the second bullet there, expanding the use of mental health courts and similar services. We're actually trying to also increase and elevate prosecutors' offices this year as well. So looking to the next slide, program specific areas, priority areas continued. Ensure that funds are used for public health and public safety. Demonstrate the active participation of co-applicants. Document in whole or in part that funds will be used for transition and reentry services as people are leaving institutional settings and incarceration back into the community. Next slide, slide 29. So now we'll just cover the award information really briefly. There is an anticipated total of 30 awards, which each awardee receiving a maximum of $550,000 for a 36-month, 3-year project, which is expected to begin October 1 of 2023. All right. Well, thanks everyone for your attention. All those details of the solicitation. I know some of it is quite quite detailed, but we're always here to answer questions. So now I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Nikisha Love from the programs office, and she's going to talk you through the budget and a few other pieces of the application. Nikisha?
Thank you, Maria. Hello, everyone. My name is Nikisha Love. I'm the grant manager for the Justice and Mental Health Program. We're going to speak on the budget. The budget should be complete, cost-effective, and allowable. All costs should be reasonable, applicable, and necessary for project activities. The applicant should identify within their budget which items, services, etc. would be covered by matching sources and explain what type of match will be provided. Only $100,000 of funds will be available to complete the planning phase in the first 12 months of the project. The budget should clearly indicate the cost for the planning phase. Next slide, please. Program budget approval in coordination with BJA and the technical assistance coordinator are required to complete the planning phase before beginning the implementation phase. There are several costs that are not allowed within the JMHCP funding. The JMHCP does not fund construction. Additionally, prizes, rewards, entertainment, trinkets, or any other monetary incentives, client stipends, gift cards, vehicle purchases, and food and beverages are all unallowable costs. Next slide, please. Cost sharing matching. The JMHCP authorizing legislation requires a non-federal match of 20% total project costs in project years 1 and 2, and 40% of total project costs in project year 3. Cash and or in-kind third-party match are allowed. Match costs and budget must meet the same guidelines as federal costs for being allowable, reasonable, applicable, and necessary for the project. It is recommended that you do not include excessive match over the minimum requirements in the application's budget. Next slide, please. This slide here gives you more information about how to calculate the match requirement. First, you divide the federal expenditures by the federal share percentage to find the total project costs. Second, you subtract the federal amount from which the total project costs, which then equals the non-federal match amount. Should have been federal amount. Next slide, please. For clarification, the difference between subawards versus procurement contracts. Please carefully review the OJP Grant Application Resource Guide, which is linked in the solicitation subsection titled Information on Proposed Subawards. If any are planned in the proposed procurement contracts, again, if any are planned, and the resources linked therein to ensure you properly categorize your costs in these sections. There are different administrative requirements related to each. For example, a procurement contract requires full and open competitive competition, while a subaward does not. Next slide, please. Moving on to the application criteria. This information on this slide and the next must be included in all application submission for an application to meet the basic requirements to advance to peer review and receive consideration for funding. We've also included where each document should be completed and submitted. Next slide. As well as all the information listed here, please note that applications are not required, that applicants are not required to submit performance data with the application. Rather, performance measures information is included as an alert that successful applicants will be required to submit performance data as part of the reporting requirements under the award. Also, an applicant that proposed to use award funds to conduct project evaluations must follow guidance under Note on Project Evaluations under the OJP Grant Application Resource Guide. Next slide, please. Budget and associated documentation. Applicants should structure their budgets to allocate $100,000 to complete the planning phase within 12 months. While applicants will be required to submit a budget for the entire 36-month program at the time of application submission, applicants may revise their budgets based on any outcomes resulting from the planning phase. Next slide, please. MOUs and other supporting documents. Applicants should include for each named partner a signed memorandum of understanding, MOU, letter of intent or subcontract that confirms the partner's agreement to support the project. Applications submitted from 2 or more entities are encouraged to develop and submit signed MOUs or signed letters of intent. Next slide. Application criteria. Applications that meet the basic minimum requirements will be reviewed by peer reviewers. Applications will be evaluated on how the proposed program addresses the following criteria. For each criteria is weighed as 15% for the state of the problem, description of the issue, 40% for the project design and implementation, 30% for the capabilities and components, 5% for the data collection and performance measures plan, and finally, 10% for the budget. Next slide. I will now briefly highlight the submission requirements. Next slide. Applications must be submitted to DOJ in a 2-step process. Step 1 is the applicants must submit a SF424 and an SFLL in grants.gov by 8:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on March the 21st, 2023 at the reference link. Please note, to register in grants.gov, applicants will need to obtain a data universal numbering system, which is a DUNS number, and system for award management, SAM, registration or renewal. Step 2 is the applicants must submit the full application, including attachments, by 8:59 p.m. on March the 28th, 2023 at the reference link. All applicants are encouraged to review the How to Apply section in the OJP Grant Application Resource Guide. OJP urges applicants to submit applications at least 72 hours prior to the application due date to allow for the application to receive validation messages or rejection notifications from grants.gov and to correct in a timely fashion and any problems that may have caused a rejection notification. Next slide, please. Registration. Before submitting an application, all applicants must register with the System for Award Management, SAM. You must renew and validate your registration every 12 months. If you do not renew your SAM's registration, it will expire. An expired registration can delay or prevent application submission into grants.gov and just grants. Registration and renewal can take up to 10 business days to complete. Also remember that this application has a two-step process. Be clear on the deadline for each process and reference the How to Apply section of the OJP Grant Application Resource Guide. Next slide, please. Make sure to submit by the grants.gov deadline and submit the SF-424 form and the SF-LLL form as early as possible, but no later than 48 hours before the grants.gov deadline. If you need assistance with this process, contact the grants.gov customer service hotline. Next slide, please. Make sure to submit the full application, including attachments, to Just Grants by the application deadline. For technical assistance with the full application, contact the Just Grants service desk. I would like to say thank you all at this time, and I look forward to working with you in the future. At this time, I will turn it back over to Aisha. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nikisha. Thank you very much, Maria. So now Nikisha and Maria will be sticking with us because we'll begin the question and answer portion of the webinar. We'll respond to as many questions as possible in the time remaining. And as just a reminder, if you have additional questions, you can submit them by clicking the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen and entering your questions there. Another reminder is that this webinar is being recorded and we will post it along with the slide deck on the CSG Justice Center's website. There's a lot, we know there's a lot of information to process. We want to make sure you have it available should you want to go back to it. Let's see here. I'm going to start with some of the questions and answers in the Q&A section. First, the question I see here is one, are university security or police eligible to apply? Maria, you can correct me if I'm wrong about this, but that would be more appropriate for the Connect and Protect application since they would be university police. Am I correct there? Or would you like to add? Oh, you're muted, Maria.
Yes, sorry. It does sound like it's more of a Connect and Protect project. However, if it has to do with treatment and services or building partnership, really outside of the actual response, maybe support services or something like that. I mean, it could very well fall within JMHCP too. But the straight up answer is most likely it's Connect and Protect.
Thank you. The next question is about the mental health agency and whether the mental health agency that would be eligible to apply for this award has to be a government agency or could it be a private provider?
Yeah, and that's where a little bit of the confusion comes in. You could fall under the other category. A mental health provider can apply, but they must be considered a state or local government because the statute says state or local government. So you have to be considered a designee of the state or local government. So maybe a county health department, or you're listed by the state to provide services because you're in a rural community and there's no other services there. So the state says, okay, you're our agency. You're going to act on our behalf in this rural community. And you are the designee for the state and you're listed somewhere and you can print it off and you can attach to your application and show that you are acting as a state or local government.
Right. Another question about eligibility also came in. The question is, can a county government that oversees or implements a mental health court be the criminal justice agency that's applying? And could they be an eligible applicant?
Yes, because you're a county government. Basically, that's the answer.
The next question, similar to a previous one, but I think it bears repeating. So if a police department wants to apply for a co-responder program, should they apply to JMHCP or Connect and Protect? Most likely, given that description, as you heard from Maria, it's most likely going to be Connect and Protect, and that's your best place to apply. Oh, this is another one. May a county apply for both JMHCP and Connect and Protect? You could apply to both. You would presumably be applying for different programs because of the areas of focus are different. Maria, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Nope, that's accurate. Different projects. They should be different projects. Mm-hmm.
This next question, I hope I'm interpreting it correctly, but it says this seems to be for mental health for the public. Is there any aspect of this for things such as peer support or for public safety? So I will say that JMHCP does support programs that fund peer support services for people who are justice involved, which is, of course, an aspect of improving public safety. So I hope that I understood that question correctly and that answer was sufficient. But Mr. Dugan, or I'm assuming Mr., but please feel free to type another question if that didn't quite answer what you had. Okay, sorry. You've got great questions, everyone. So I'm just trying to make sure I'm keeping up with all of them. The next question is whether a federally qualified healthcare center could serve as an eligible applicant if they are mental, or I'm assuming, because it just says federally qualified healthcare center question mark. So I'm assuming the question is, could they be an eligible applicant? And Maria, of course, kick this to you, but should they be a mental health agency that's designated by the state? I would imagine that FQHC would be eligible.
Yeah, it all comes back to whether or not you actually are a local government, like a county or something like that, or like a local criminal justice community board that acts on behalf of, the county or the local government to apply for funding. You could be like one of those criminal justice planning committees or something like that. But it all comes back to state, tribal, or local government. You've got to somehow, shape, or form show that's who you are.
And that speaks to the next question as well, which is, can the county be the applicant and the mental health provider be a sub-awardee if they don't have a local government agency that does mental health? So should the county be the applicant, that county should be eligible and then could, of course, partner with their mental health agency.
Sure. So, not every organization is like well suited to deal with us, the federal government, right? And have capacity to do that because, we ask a lot and there's a lot to manage. And that's oftentimes why in local communities, they're trying to figure out, okay, who's going to be the applicant? First, you have to be eligible to be the applicant and you have to have a partnership. You still have to, if you're the mental health provider and you're a government and you're the one that has capacity to apply, that's great, but you still have to have a criminal justice partner. So, you have to fulfill all those things. So, but I understand that's why this gets a little bit confusing. So you have to check all those blocks.
Absolutely. And I like your note that not every agency is going to have the capacity to do the requirements from the federal government, all of which are can be challenging, but one of the things that the Justice Center does as the technical assistance provider is really try to help all of our grantees meet those requirements and know when they're at risk of not meeting those requirements. So we really try to support people through that process, but it is a good idea to really think about what agency is best positioned to be the lead agency in that way.
Yes.
This next question, I think there's some nuances here, but if a police department has an in-house mental health team embedded, and that is not through an MOU, can we still apply? I think I might be interpreting this question as whether or not if there's a team within the police department, it probably the answer depends a little bit on who the applicant is. Like, is the police department applying? Is that team literally staff of the police department. What does embedded mean? Embedded means different things to different people. So I think that those kind of subtleties will make a big difference. And whether or not, as we've noted before, the focus of this fits best under JMHCP or Connect and Protect. But as a criminal justice agency, police departments can apply to one of these two solicitations. I don't know, Maria, is there anything else you'd like to add there?
Right. So it is a bit nuanced because it would depend, who's applying, and if embed means that the behavioral health part or partnership in that program is actually staffed as staff of the police department and on the police department's budget, or are they just contracted by an outside agency but are housed, just work and share workspace? So it can mean different things. The main thing to remember is that JMHCP is a partnership between the justice and the mental health or behavioral health partner. That behavioral health partner could be funded by an outside agency or be housed by be funded by the police department. Either way, as long as that partnership is there, that's fine. And then the applicant has to be a government entity.
Great. And I see there's some more questions coming out of the Q&A, but I know folks also threw some questions in the chat. So I'm going to move over to the chat questions for a little bit and then come back to the Q&A question just to make sure we're covering everything. One of the first questions we got is, can the match portion of this grant be used to provide services to individuals who are not considered preliminarily qualified offenders? I don't know, Maria or Nikisha, if either of you feels best to respond to that.
So I'm not sure who would not be preliminarily qualified. I think the biggest thing to remember is that there has to be an alleged offense that brings a person with a mental health disorder in contact with the criminal justice system. Like, that's probably the easier way to think about it. The target population is really those individuals that perhaps have never received a diagnosis or have cycled in and out of the justice system because they just, for whatever reason, have not been connected to treatment. And the program is really designed for low-level offenses, like things that just get people into the criminal justice system and cycling in and out. And so that's the target population. There's a little bit of wiggle room if everyone's on board for something a little bit more serious, but the community really has to be on board that person doesn't pose a risk to the community. So, if you go back and read the statute, I read it all to you, just because it provokes questions, which is good. And I would just say, if you have questions beyond that, we might have to maybe talk on the side, but I hope that helps.
Thank you, Maria. And just, to Maria's point, we are going to share the contact information for folks on this webinar. And like I said, we'll post the webinar and the slides after. The next question is there a real list of JMHCP activities? My guess is that this, what you're asking, is there a complete list of every single type of program that JMHCP might fund? And I think I can answer this, which is there is not a complete list of every single type of program that JMHCP might fund, because there's just such a huge variety of the different types of programs. However, I'll put this in the chat. We do have a JMHCP website, which includes a set of grantee examples from previous successful grantees, which are helpful to review, as well as if you go through to any of the issue areas and read some of the materials there, you'll see examples of the different types of programs that JMHCP does support. Maria, anything you'd like to add?
No, you did a great job. The beauty of the Justice and Mental Health Collaboration Program, and I brag about this all the time, is that really it can almost fund just about anything that helps keep a person connected to treatment, stable, on the road to recovery. It promotes safety. The activities prevent a person from recidivating, going back into jail, and it keeps a person who really doesn't belong in the criminal justice system out of the criminal justice system and connected to treatment. So you can just imagine, like, like that. And the approach and the way communities are innovating all the time, we can't keep up with that. We could never provide an exhaustive list because communities are very creative in how they do those things. Those are the outcomes we're trying to get to. So we leave it up to you, but I can guarantee you, other than the big things that the federal government will say are not allowable, like vehicles are not allowable, cars, food, stipends. I mean, we provide that short list of things that are not allowable because almost everything else is. And matter of fact, even when we get to cars, I know transportation's a big issue for communities, but you can get reimbursed for mileage. You could even potentially lease. So we'd have to work that out, and we'd have to get Nikisha on the line and work that out. But there are things you can do, almost anything. I'll leave it there.
Yep. That's great. Let's see, what's the next question? Next one I'm seeing is, can 911 centers apply for both grants if they're implementing an alternative response program, which includes mental health responders and law enforcement as dual dispatch? So I'll turn that to you, Maria, to answer. I think there's two questions in there. One thing I think is, could you apply to both grants for the same program? And then question is, is this kind of program something that could be funded under JMHCP or Connect and Protect?
It could be funded under, the truth is it could be funded under either one, but it really depends on what your goals and objectives are. To me, it's sounding a little bit more like, like a Connect and Protect, because it's like you're talking about deploying like law enforcement or the right response to the right situation, which could be, a peer navigator or counselor, or could be a clinician, could be law enforcement and a clinician or a social worker. I mean, there's so many variations, but it's sounding like Connect and Protect.
The next are the funds only for TBI and PTSD, or is this a demographic or a diagnosis that can be included in activities? So just as Maria said, this JMHCP is very flexible. Maria elevated the fact that mental health condition includes TBI and PTSD for this award, because some jurisdictions don't necessarily include traumatic brain injury or post-traumatic stress disorder in their definition of mental health condition. But we just want to make sure that you know that those are things that you could be focused on in this, but it's not the only type of condition or need that the grant could focus on. Maria, anything to add there?
No, perfect, exactly.
Oh, this is a really good, I mean, all these questions are great, guys, but this one's really digging in. How do jurisdictions operationalize the collaboration in terms of fiscal and administration of the grant? We can cross collaborate, but one applicant will be primary for fiscal or admin work.
Yes, that is exactly right. And Aisha and I are smiling because many times, and I'll just speak plainly here, if we don't hear from you, we go looking for who's in charge. and that's why there has to be, somebody has to be at the helm. And so we have to make sure that, there's one applicant organization, there's an authorizing official, the authorizing official, they are the signator and they are responsible ultimately for that grant project. So although there's a lot of people that are involved in the successful administration of a program, ultimately there's a handful of people that are signatories, and those are the people that are ultimately responsible to follow the rules, to meet the conditions, to engage, make sure that the people on the project are engaged in TTA, and all the federal rule part. So yes.
Okay. The next two questions I think are getting at the same concept, but for different, for different departments. So the first question is, what if you are a correctional system that has mental health within our services? I assume we don't need a partner. We don't need to partner with an outside agency as well. Similarly, so there's a question about if a local department has an in-house mental health clinician, are they not eligible? So the questions being both about if a criminal justice agency has mental health services within their agency, do they need to have an external partner to be eligible, external mental health partner to be eligible for this solicitation?
I'm really glad that question was asked, because you've already got the partnership built in, because you're an institution and you essentially have, you know, behavioral health services within, you know, confinement, and people are, but this is something that I would just, for food for thought, I guess you could say, you know, most people are working their way through the system, and 95% will come out and go back to the community. And really, like a reentry plan should begin the day the person is screened and assessed and coming through the door, because they're already working their way back out to the community. And I would just strongly encourage you to think about the strength of your application would be around not only what you're providing within the facility, but also what are you planning for a warm handoff to have that person connected in a reentry plan back into the community so that they don't recidivate. Because remember, one of the outcomes, what we like to see with JMHCP, is that people don't come back to the system, that they're connected to treatment and that they stay connected to treatment. So I would just encourage you to think that way.
Yeah, I love that answer. And I know that you were talking about it also in terms of just that warm handoff for people when they're leaving the correctional system. I think, you know, under Connect and Protect, or otherwise focus on that are grantees that are focused on law enforcement, we also think a lot about how co-responder programs or other initiatives that law enforcement work on that partner with behavioral health, think a lot about how they help connect people to community-based services that are outside of the justice system. So a lot of the JMHCP or Connect and Protect programs that say have a co-response team, that co-response team also has a relationship with a community-based mental health provider, so that they can do a warm handoff for some of the people they interact with to receive ongoing support and services, so that person's less likely to come back into contact with law enforcement. So I really love that point, and what makes for both a strong application and a strong program. And of course, as we mentioned, most likely a co-response program that's being done in partnership between a law enforcement agency and a behavioral health agency probably fits better under Connect and Protect, just because the Connect and Protect solicitation is focused on law enforcement, but wanted to raise that here. Let's see, this question. This one is a question about needs of deaf community. So our deaf community is in desperate need for a mental health therapist who are deaf or hard of hearing, or CODA, so they can provide mental health services to the deaf and for the deaf. Is this a possibility under this grant program or grant proposal?
Oh, yes, most definitely. And under the ADA, I would also add. So it's very important to consider people with disabilities when you're providing services. And I encourage you to go for it, because that's great. I think that's great.
This is a clarifying question. So is the state corrections department able to apply for funds to expand a program that offers co-occurring treatment for mental health and substance abuse within our correctional setting? The FOA sounded more like community focused, so wanted to double check. I think I can answer that quickly, which is that we do this initiative, this solicitation does fund supports that happen within corrections departments, for sure, that this is not just about supports that happen outside of the corrections system, and we do want to make sure that the care people receive while they're incarcerated is strong. And to Maria's point, one of the things we also do, of course, encourage is that people think about that point of reentry and how they're going to connect people to services after as well. Maria, anything else there?
No, I think that's great. You covered it really well.
The next is just a question on the required match. And I think that is a little tricky to get your brain around. So maybe Nikisha, can I ask you, would you mind just reviewing the required match again?
Okay, the required match is for years 1 and 2, it's 20%. In year 3, it's 40%. So basically, when you are doing your your budget, whatever amount, like Aisha went to the slide. Can you go back to that slide, Aisha? Where it shows the breakdown right here, where you see the 550,000. If you was to take that, you would divide that 550,000 by 80%, which is for year 1 and 2. You would divide that by 80%, then you will multiply that amount that you get after you divide it with the 80%, you will times that by 20, and that will be the required match for year 1 and 2. And you would do the exact same thing for year 3. The only difference is you would divide it by 60% and then times that by 40% to get the required match for year 3.
Thanks so much, Nikisha. And this slide, along with the others, will be available for you to review as you're putting together your applications. You know, that's a nuance and tricky. Okay, let me just make sure. I want to make sure I'm not missing questions. I think we answered this one. We answered that one.
Aisha, I'd like to just make one point of clarification while we're kind of scrolling the questions as well. If we could go back to slide 40 for just a second. I just want to make sure we're just super clear on this, because last year we had some applicants to sort of misunderstand. I just want to make sure I say it here that an MOU or memorandum of understanding is absolutely required as part of your grant application package. It needs to be submitted. It doesn't need to be perfect or complete or signed, but you have to, at a minimum, think through who your partners are to show that you are planning, this cross-system collaboration. And I just want to make sure that, that it's clear that it is not the same as a letter of support or a letter of intent, or, like an agency sending along a letter saying this agency is wonderful. It's just not the same thing. A memorandum of understanding is about a justice entity, roles and responsibilities, and a behavioral health entity, roles and responsibilities, and how they're going to work together. And so even though you're not, you might still be planning your project, you haven't even started that planning phase. A lot of applicants get kind of stumped on that. They're like, but how do we know what the roles and responsibilities are? And I know it's tough, but you have to at least find who you think your partner is going to be, have a discussion, and think about what you could possibly put on the paper. And we have templates. It doesn't have to be complicated. It could be 1 page, 2 pages. It doesn't have to be anything really complicated, but it does have to be submitted.
Thank you, Maria. Thanks for making that clarification. This question is, how does JMHCP plan to incorporate remote patient monitoring into their behavioral health strategy? Maria, I think I can jump in on this if you want to add in. So what I would say is, generally speaking, what the JMHCP program does, and my team is, as I said, has been the technical assistance provider from the beginning. What we do is we help to elevate promising practices and best practices across at the criminal justice mental health intercept. So we as the technical assistance provider and BJA as the funder is not prescriptive about the exact strategies that you use. We make, as a technical assistance provider, we help you think about what is evidence-based, what will work, both to reduce justice system involvement and what will work to increase health and well-being. So it isn't that we are going to say you must use remote patient monitoring. However, should a jurisdiction incorporate that into their program, we'll help them think about what works well, what might not work well, help them ask those questions and implement best practices. Maria, anything you want to add on to there?
No, I think that was good.
This one, I think you've spoken to this, but I think it bears repeating. If we're a state agency and this person's coming from a state correctional agency, are we eligible to apply on our own?
Yes, you're a state agency and you're eligible to apply. But the other thing you have to check off is you have to have a behavioral health partner. So you're eligible as a state agency, but it has to be a cross-system partnership. So that's the next thing.
And very similar question. Can the district attorney general and community mental health provider apply, with the district attorney general being as the state state local applicant?
Yes.
Okay, next question. As an element of our state's higher education, can a state's medical school apply in partnership with a criminal justice system agency?
Yes. So there you would have really the goal is for the mental health agency. The goal between the cross system partnership is that you have the justice entity, and then you have a service provider, someone that can provide treatment services. So if the medical school has actually like built in, clinicians that are maybe they have to do so many hours of clinical service, and they're going to partner with a justice entity to do something in the community, or under a licensed clinician or something like that. Like I said, the programs are very innovative and very creative. So, but the main thing is that if you're a university, you've already checked the block on the state, as far as a state to apply, a state university college can apply as a state entity, but you have to have that behavioral health partnership. So even though you're teaching about behavioral health, which I think is pretty cool, you've also got to be kind of providing the services. So you've got to have a partnership somewhere that provides services.
Great. The next question is there help for me to bring this to my community players? I think this is probably asking about whether there's help to bring this solicitation or awareness of JMHCP. One of the suggestions that I can just give is first, you can definitely send them the link to this recorded webinar. You can also send them the link to the JMHCP website, which we'll drop in the chat again. And then also at the end, we'll also have a link to sign up to the Justice Center's Behavioral Health newsletter, which has a lot of information about JMHCP. So some of those types of resources can be really helpful when you're doing outreach. Another trick that I always like is if you can think about what your community's priorities are, and then look to see if maybe we've published a document on that. Say we want to think about a crisis stabilization unit. We have almost surely published a document on whichever type of intervention you're interested in. So sometimes it's good to look at that and send that along. So that's just my suggestion about how to raise some awareness.
Yeah, that's great.
We're getting a few questions. I see there's a few questions. Just maybe we can go back to slide 40, Maria. I'm seeing a few questions on just the MOU versus letter of intent. Folks are confused about whether or not a letter of intent is sufficient, or if they need an MOU. So would you mind going through that a bit more?
Sure. And yeah, and I apologize. This slide escaped me because I found as we were going through it, I was crossing out the or. And you must, just clearly stated, you must have an MOU. It doesn't have to be signed, but you must have one in your grant application, because if you don't, it's going to get screened out at the basic minimum requirement stage, which means it's not even going to go through to peer review. And we have, expert panels of peer reviewers that review these applications, but it won't even go forward. So, a memorandum of understanding, if you don't even know where to begin with that, we have templates we could share, and it doesn't have to be really complicated. Like I said, I have to see, when I open up that attachment, I have to see that it's a justice entity and a behavioral health entity. And I have to see that, they're each going to do maybe even 3 things each. I've got to see something. I have to see some attempt at a partnership.
Great. And thanks for that flag. We'll make sure to make that update on the slide before we post it to the website, so we avoid that confusion. Okay. It looks like also, Andrea, if you could go back to the slide that's about the mental health authority. There's some clarifying question about, can you say more about what it means for a private mental health agency to have to be designated as a mental health authority to provide services? Maria, would that be for you?
An eligibility question? Yes.
Oh yeah, about the designated by the state as a mental health authority question. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Oh, sorry. I was saying the question was, sorry. Could you say a little bit more about what it means for a private mental health agency to be designated as a mental health authority to be able to be eligible for this?
Sure. So a private behavioral health entity that provides services, they might be, say, part of a local management entity that provides services to that local community. It could be like a small nonprofit that is contracted through a local management entity or something like that. And you can be a partner or subgrantee on an application. Of course, you can be a partner with a justice entity all day, no problem. But if you, as that nonprofit, want to apply and be the applicant entity, then you have to be considered a state or local government. And the only way that you can, because we're legislated that way, JMHCP really ties our hands that way. So the only way that you can apply and be the applicant entity is you have to show up on a list or be considered by the state mental health authority as a unit of local government. That means that you're not like a contract of a contract of a contract. You've got to be literally like the state says, yes, this entity provides service for us as a state designee, because in this rural corner of the state, there are no other services, and people can't travel to us where we provide, as the state, we provide services in maybe the capital or some city, and people can't get there. So the state designates this nonprofit in this local community to be the mental health authority on behalf of the state. And so you've got to get something in writing from the state that says, yes, this nonprofit they are acting as a government entity for us. I hope that helps.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, I see some more. I'm going to turn back to the Q&A because I see some questions coming in there. I think we answered. We're a county sheriff and a county behavioral health department doing a co-responder program. Can we be joint applicants if we both work for the county?
Mm-hmm. So you both work for the county, so you're eligible to apply. So you've checked that block. And you've also checked the block on the partnership part, because you've got justice and you've got behavioral health. Now, you can only submit one application from the same entity. Like if you're, for the same project, if you're going to submit, this is where it gets a little tricky, but now you both work for the county, and maybe the county behavioral health entity wants to do something more treatment. Maybe they're working on a crisis stabilization unit, or, and they're going to come in JMHCP to do that. And the sheriff's office is going to do they're going to work on more response, and they're going to train officers, and they're going to go out, and yeah, they are going to pull some of those clinicians from that crisis stabilization and co-respond every now and again or something like that. They're going to apply under Connect and Protect. Well, those are really like two different projects, because one is focused on treatment and setting up something else over here, and then the sheriff's office is setting up co-responder. So that's okay. If you both submit the same exact application from the county, we're only going to take one. We're not going to, and you have to decide who is going to be the applicant entity. So who is better positioned to manage that federal grant? Think about that.
Great. I think we answered this, but the person might be just adding it again to get some further clarification. So can the match portion of this grant be used to provide services to individuals who are not considered preliminary qualified offenders? And then similarly, in determining whether to designate a person as a preliminary qualified offender, is the team required to exclude people charged with specific offenses listed in the legislation? They have here 34 USC, the number. Or can individuals with those offenses be included in the project if the team believes they meet the benefits of their inclusion, if including them outweighs the negatives? The benefits outweighs the negatives.
Right. So a couple of things. First, on match, just remember that if it's allowable, like whatever's allowable for federal funding, like your federal dollars, part of your grant money, like if, you know, there's only a short list of things we said are not federally allowable, right? So you can't, like I mentioned vehicles, you can't use your match for things that are federally unallowable, like vehicles. You, whatever, you know, it's the same rules apply to federal money, applies to your match money. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that under the statute for qualified offenders. So let's go back to that one more time. So if the community and those people in the community agree on some of the low-level offenses, and maybe even some of the mid-range offenses, if they agree that people that commit those offenses can participate, it's almost a case-by-case basis because it's so nuanced. You know, whether or not the team, your stakeholder group is going to agree. And it kind of goes back to that, the importance of a collaboration, a community collaboration and a stakeholder group. They have to agree that people participating and people that are diverted to the community don't pose a risk to that community. The handful of offenses that absolutely exclude people from this program, and it's outlined, it's very prescriptive in the legislation, and I'd have to go back to read it, but it's like sex offenses, sexual exploitation of children, and murder and assault. Like, and I think, you know, assault, there's different levels of assault too, right? So it has to be something serious. And again, that goes back to your stakeholder group. And I would just really reiterate that this project is really about community collaboration and a stakeholder group. You wouldn't want one entity or two entities making those decisions. Those are big decisions and they have huge implications if somebody's in the community and something really goes sideways, goes really wrong, right? And they're a victim. So you definitely want to have a body of people that have input in those decisions.
Great. Let's see. I think we have another MOU question, which I think came in after we talked about MOUs. Maybe not, but let's go ahead and answer it just in case there's more clarification. So to clarify, we would not need an MOU and/or a letter of support from the prosecutors or defense offices. They would be stakeholders in the program. They would be in the P&I plan. The MOU could be the lead agency, such as the county sheriff's office and the county mental health division, both county departments, but would still need an MOU. Is that correct?
Yes, you still need an MOU. It's still a partnership between a justice and a behavioral health entity. And those two entities who partner have the major roles to play in the project. Then underneath the justice entity, they may have subs and partners and stakeholders. And then under the behavioral health entity, they may have partners and subs and stakeholders. And as a whole, you form a stakeholder group, but for the purposes of the MOU, that's going to be between the justice entity and the behavioral health entity.
Okay. Let's see, the next question I think is about, again, a question around like what counts as a mental health mental health agency. Are there guidelines for the behavioral health provider? As in, do they have to be public or county provider, or can a private hospital or outpatient facility count?
In terms of hospitals, that gets a little more confusing. You would have to demonstrate to me that you're acting as a government. So however you do that, you have to demonstrate to me that you're acting as a state or local government. And I'll just leave that there. For nonprofits operating in the local community, you really have to call the mental health authority and find out where you fall on the scheme of things as far as services. If you're not sure you're a government or a state organization, you really, really should call the state mental health authority and find out.
And I see a question here about, can we get a copy of the MOU template? We can definitely, when we send around information, make sure that we include from this webinar, include a direction to where you can find the MOU templates.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Next question is, I'm a grant proposal writer for our city. Our local police department wants to apply collaborating with the local county health department. Mm-hmm. Would the police department be able to apply, or would it be the county health department, or could our city apply and the police department and health department be subawards?
Yeah, all three. I could see all three of those working just fine. You have applicant agencies and you have implementing agencies, and that can work just fine. But it's really up to you and your stakeholders to come together and figure out who's best positioned to apply and who's best to support. But you've got all the pieces in place.
Okay. I don't see any other questions. I'm just going to give it a second to see if anything comes through. And we are coming to the end. So I think we're good to then say just thank you so much, everyone, for being with us. We're really excited.
Yes. Appreciate all the questions. I'm really glad we had all those questions, because that tells me we're going to have really great applications. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I will drop into the chat one more time the Connect and Protect solicitation webinar link, should you want to join us. So that is tomorrow, but also remember, if you can't join us, we will also post the slides and the slides and the recording, for that webinar on the website, as well as this one. Please reach out if you need anything. Best of luck with your applications. And thank you again, Maria and Nikisha. Thank you so much.
Thank you, CSG. Thanks, Aisha.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.